Have you ever wondered if the gun that you bought has enough stopping power? Well, this is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms in Snow Camp, North Carolina, and it's time for me to throw my own 50 cents worth, sorry, bad joke, into the great caliber debate. The basic question is, how many rounds does it take to kill somebody? The smart-ass answer is 1. The question is, how many rounds does it take you to get to that 1? The data that when you go look it up, it's all over the place. There are so many factors that get thrown in. It becomes a big debate over, is this round better than that round? The one thing that's never in question is that a shotgun, in terms of stopping somebody, and I don't mean killing them, I mean this is even incapacitating them, for example, is by far the best weapon for home defense in order to do that. And we talked about that in a previous episode. So let's talk about different calibers, and there's a whole bunch of terms and stuff that I'll throw at you. Let me just go through them real quick. There's, FMJ, TMJ, RN, LRN, HP, JHP, ball, monolithic, polymer. And what do all of these mean? Well, depends. FMJ is full metal jacket, just like the movie. TMJ is total metal jacket. What's the difference between those two? Well, full metal jacket, most of these have some sort of copper alloy as an outer shell, but a full metal jacket, the base of the bullet is still visible lead. TMJ is total metal jacket, and this is the entire slug is covered in some sort of copper alloy. Why? Well, why not? The flippant answer is, does it really matter? Not really. The bullet's carried slightly differently, but if you think at most engagement ranges for defense, you're talking, well, say the maximum would be 25 yards. If you have to defend yourself because you feel threatened that far away, you'll have some explaining to do to the police. However, in North Carolina, when you have to demonstrate shooting ability for your concealed carry handgun permit, it's at 3, 7, and 10 yards, so a maximum of 30 feet. And the data shows most of the shootings are significantly closer. They're in the, 3-yard range, so 10 feet or closer. The other reason for total metal jacket, and by the way, these rounds are tougher to come by, I mean, you can still get them, is some ranges are requiring them because of lead exposure. Obviously, you're not exposing yourself if the bullet is in the casing because there's no exposed lead. And typically, the inside of the bullet is a lead slug. So the most common by far is going to be labeled FMJ or full metal jacket. Then you'll see things like RN, which is round nose, which is a standard, non-hollow point bullet. And then you have something called LRN. You usually see these with 22s, which stands for lead round nose, meaning the bullet's not jacketed. It's just open lead or exposed lead. Sometimes you'll see round nose, notably with things like 45, the classic is calling it ball ammunition, meaning it's standard ammunition. Then you'll see hollow point or jacketed hollow point, which has, again, a polymer, or not a polymer, but a copper alloy typically with a lead slug inside. There's lots of variations. There are some that have a little spike in the middle, which is like hydroshock. There are some that are ballistic that have a penetrator, but it's hollow point underneath the little plastic thing at the tip. It really varies. And you can spend a small amount of money for a hollow point, or you can spend an incredible amount of money. during Ammogeddon, which is when you couldn't buy any ammunition anywhere. I saw 9mm rounds and one particular brand selling for $13 a round. When prior to Ammogeddon, 9mm was 15 cents a round. Obviously, it's actually not a little bit higher. It's significantly higher these days. And it's not likely to come down. So, and then we go to the other terms, which would be things like monolithic, which sounds like, all right, we're talking about, stone. Well, monolithic just means that the slug is made out of the same material. So you might have a copper alloy hollow point or a copper alloy round nose bullet. Why monolithic? They actually are inherently more accurate. You have to keep in mind that, a lead slug surrounded by copper, you're going to have differences in thicknesses or densities between the two, so the bullet might not carry the same within each round. Now, are we talking huge differences? No. Monolithic, on the other hand, the slug is all one material, all the same density, and assuming it's the same mass and milled or cast the same way, they're all going to shoot the exact same way. Now, again, that doesn't take into account the shooter. These bullets will not turn you from a bad shot into a good shot. It just means inherently the round might be more accurate. And then we get to the polymer rounds. There's a growing number of ammunition manufacturers that are making these bullets with a plastic copper polymer. They look kind of cool. In fact, I use them as defensive ammo. And they are significantly lighter. So if I happen to have a magazine with .45 caliber hollow point or ball ammunition compared to a magazine loaded with the same number of these polymer round ammunition, it's about a third less in weight. And that's a significant savings, especially when you've got a heavy magazine like that. But even assuming it's similar for other magazine or other calibers, it's still a weight savings. Now you're going to go, gee, am I that worried about carrying it? No, I'm not. What I am concerned about are things like over-penetration, which means the bullet goes through the target and keeps going. The neat thing about these polymer bullets is, most of them are grooved, so they spin with the rifling. And then when they hit the target, the grooves cause it to spin the other way and it fragments. So there's virtually no risk of over-penetration. Even with a 9mm, which is a hot little round and is very likely to go through a target at fairly, standard engagement ranges. And it depends, with the state, you'll actually have to check with an attorney on this, but I can tell you in North Carolina, you own the bullet from the time it leaves your gun until the time it stops. So if you hit an intruder and then shot somebody else as a consequence, meaning they were, collateral damage, you could be charged with a crime for that. I mean, unless, of course, the second person that got hit was partners with the guy who you were trying to defend against. Okay, so having said that disclaimer, are there advantages and disadvantages to those types of ammunition? Sure. Are they going to matter at typical engagement ranges? Not really. The polymer bullets I fire, the slugs are significantly lighter, which means that they have a higher muzzle velocity. So they're actually traveling faster than the standard round for that particular gun. And on one of them, the manufacturer shows significant drop in the shot, meaning as it travels, it starts dropping down towards the ground, because of gravity, velocity's dropping. And, the reality is, if it's designed as defensive ammunition, I don't need to be shooting that out to 100 yards. So for up close and personal, these kinds of rounds are great. And like anything else, you want to test out the ammunition with your gun. You want to see, A, whether or not you like it, and B, whether or not your gun can handle it. And you're going to go, okay, hey, Alan, every gun can handle, any round. Well, kind of, sort of. I actually sold a gun of mine, my very first 45. And I had purchased a bunch of Hydroshock ammunition. And when I was up north, this is what the Rochester City Police used, which is a hollow point bullet with a little spike in the middle that actually causes more damage on impact. Well, I loaded the magazine and it wouldn't chamber the round. The feed ramp on that gun was very steep, so as the round was stripped off and being fed up into the chamber in the barrel, it was catching. So while it was a very good ammo, it was not an ammunition that I could use for that gun. In fact, I wound up firing off all the ammunition, and the way I got it to work was I opened up the slide, loaded around, hand-loaded around into the chamber, closed the slide and put a magazine in, and at that point the recoil energy from the round being fired gave it a powerful enough move that most of the time it would feed the next round. And the emphasis on this is most of the time. Well, the time it doesn't work, hopefully it's not in a life or death situation or a self-defense situation and your gun doesn't work. That's the wrong time to find out the ammo doesn't work. And, I'll get on my soapbox. I'll talk about this in another episode. But, when you own a gun, you better know how to shoot it. And that includes loading it, cleaning it, and knowing how to operate it effectively without hurting you or anyone else that you do not want to hurt. But more on that later. All right, so let's talk about, I'll split this into two groups. We'll have the things like semi-automatic rounds, which, things like 9mm, 10mm, 40 cal, 45, 380, 25, 22, 22 Magnum, 357 SIG, which is an automatic pistol round. And then we've also got typical revolver ammunition like 38, 357, 44 Magnum. And then there are some pistols or revolvers out there that can actually fire rimless ammunition, like 9mm. Some of them do it with a cylinder swap out. Some of them do it with just sort of a little hooky thing that holds them in. And what I mean by rimless versus rimmed ammo, rimless ammunition still has a groove cut around the back. This is where the extractor would grab the round and pull it out of the chamber, or pull the casing out as the weapon's being fired. Rimmed ammunition would be things like the 22 LR, the 22 rifle or pistol ammunition, or any of the revolver ammos where if you look at it, there's actually a rim sticking out, and the rim is designed to fit into the cylinder, but keep the round from falling out the other end. So, having already said that the shotguns by far are the most effective, the next two most effective calibers are 44 Magnum and 45 ACP, or 45 automatic. Why? Well, they are very large slugs. They have a lot of stopping power. And there's a premium for that. The 357, the 44 revolvers tend to be very heavy because the round packs a wallop. There's a lot of powder in there. And the 45 also has a tendency